All right, welcome. This is the Something Venture podcast. I am Ken Lindstrom. I'm your host. My guest today, Joe Garofoli. How are you doing?
All right, bud. How are you?
Good. Get right into that thing and talk.
Right into it. Yes.
So Joe is the senior political writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. Is that right?
That is correct. That's
and
my title.
That is the newspaper of record for the San Francisco Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Full disclosure, we went to college together.
Yes. How much full disclosure are you going?
It's ridiculous. So this is like my big joke about podcasts is I listen to podcasts and people are like, they kind of want to be professional. And so one of the things they do is they're like, full disclosure, I am a Cubs fan. And so when I say I hope the Cubs win, just so you know, okay, so you don't want to end up in like podcast court.
That's good. We've disclosed that now. How much full disclosure? There's not going to be anything more telling than that.
No, I think that was
We'll keep it at that.
In fact, we both went to school with Stephen Colbert was there.
That's right.
Did you know him at all?
I did not. No. I think we had friends. You probably being more towards the theater stuff had more friends in common.
I don't know. Every year, like my relationship with David Schwimmer gets bigger in my head. Back in college, but I can't even. Stephen Colbert. I can't even.
No, never saw the man.
Think of a moment when I crossed his path or would have known who he was.
Yeah, I think he was a year or two older than both of us.
Yeah, he's a year older, but I don't know. Yeah. It would have been a good one to know. But
it would have been, yeah. But at that time, it's just like another theater geeky.
At that time, your money was on Dermot Mulroney, also Northwestern.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah. All right, so here we are, the day before the election. Is it insane to do a podcast about the election the day before the election?
Yes, because it's the fear is that you're going to be dead wrong in public and you have less excuse for it.
Exactly. And then tomorrow, if we're living in like the first Trumpian dynasty or whatever it is, and we're like, oh, well, when Hillary wins, this and that's going to happen. We'll be doing it from my next podcast from Guantanamo.
Yes.
But I like the Nate Silver podcast, and he's the one who freaks you out the most by putting political stats into sports stats analogies, where he's like, well, Donald Trump has a 25% chance of winning. You're like, oh.
Well, when he said that the other day, when he said the Cubs have the same chance of winning as Trump, and then the Cubs won, that was scary to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And as the technical political term for that is bedwetting.
Yes.
Liberal bedwetting.
Yeah.
And I love the way that that's become it's become an accepted part of our culture to describe voters as bedwetters.
As bedwetters, yes. Which is probably a serious medical problem for some people. Full disclosure.
Full disclosure, I'm a bedwetter.
I have that problem.
I did get, I have gotten a couple of letters, and I think one was a shout out on Twitter from someone saying that.
Oh, really?
You should not use that term.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
that's where I draw the line.
I draw the line at bedwetting.
I drew it somewhere on the LGBTQ, like about the fifth or sixth one. I'm like, I can't learn these anymore. This is too advanced for me.
That was one of the biggest surprises of this campaign was when Trump said LGBTQ. He threw in the Q at the Republican convention. That was one of my two look at the person next to me and say, wait, what? Did he really say that? So, you're kind of writing at the same time as you're listening.
I remember hearing that and thinking the Q is like, and it can stand for two different queer or questioning or both. I was like, wow, that's pretty advanced.
And then I looked down at the sea of Republicans below me in the arena. It's like, how many people are saying, what the hell's the Q for?
There were a few.
Or what the hell is he saying?
What the hell is the T for?
What's the L and the G and the B?
What's the B for? That's everyone in college. Yeah, I absolutely remember that. Yeah, there's a part of me that thinks that, or has thought, that Trump is just some sort of genius putting on a piece of theater for all of us.
This is all performance art.
Yeah, and if at the end, like when he's giving his concession speech, and it's not Pence giving the speech, if Trump just came out and said, all right, kill the lights, strike the cameras, that was fun.
The greatest mockumentary.
Hillary, wink, wink. You're welcome.
God, that would be the actual revolution.
Yeah.
People talk about revolution on Wednesday.
Yeah.
If Trump doesn't win, or if he does win.
Yeah.
I think that would be the real revolution.
One of the things I've heard, though, the reason there won't be a real revolution is that it's old white men. And they're like, old white men can talk about going to the streets, but young white men are the ones who actually end up in the streets. So if it's not young white men, actually it may not be, as violent as you might fear.
And the people who might be prone to revolting are not people who are prone to street demonstration. The big question is, and here we're talking 12, 15 hours before the polls actually close, is how many people are who are the Trump supporters in polls are actually going to show up. And we don't know that. This is going to be a great test of polling and the accuracy of polling. We don't, and Nevada's a great case. I was in Nevada a couple of weeks ago, and right when the poll said it's a dead heat, blah, blah, blah. And so I was hanging out with the culinary workers. These are the folks who work in all the motels or the hotels in the Strip. They the bartenders, the waitresses, cocktail waitresses, et cetera, et cetera. And so they are the political force, and definitely in Las Vegas and in Nevada.
Right.
And so they're so important to get to the polls that the unions will set up like luxury buses, like nice coach line buses, and they send them to their workplaces while they're at work. Someone comes in and says, "Okay, break time. It's break time," and everybody on the bus. They drive them to a temporary pole that's near the Strip. They give them a box lunch.
Right.
You go and you vote. You eat your lunch. Get back on the bus. You go back to work.
Right.
And it's like a 45-minute round trip. It is an amazing thing. So most of those people, 57% of those culinary workers are Latino. Many of them are new immigrants to this country, and some of them are off the grid. So we don't, they might not pick up the phone if a pollster calls. And that has, and the early vote totals are phenomenal in Nevada. That Trump, and all when someone votes early is if they hand in a Democratic ballot or a Republican ballot.
Right.
The Democratic ballots are 14% ahead of the Republican ballots. The Republicans were hoping that if we can keep it to 7%, we're going to be in the ballpark.
Right.
But this is going to be a hard state for them to win at this point.
Why is it not? Isn't it the opposite case that Trump voters are super excited to get out? Or here's what you hear: Trump voters are incredibly excited to get out and vote for their candidate. The millennials who kind of don't like Hillary are going to stay home and text their votes in, or post their vote on Facebook, or whatever it is. Like, is that like a narrative? Do you believe that narrative?
I think there's a little truth to that. I think that the Trump voters, they will get out. I mean, but they have a lot of new people to the system too. I think there's definitely a lack of energy among young people. It's not going to be Hillary is not a new and exciting candidate. Let's face it, she isn't. Obama was when he first came on the scene,
right?
And he tried to speak to them, and he's tried to speak to them in their language. And speaking in terms of the platforms they were on, not just using the language they were using. So I think there's definitely going to be a gap. I think it's definitely not. It will not be as bad as it was as Democrats thought it would be back in August, right after the convention. The people are way freaked out. The Democrats are way freaked out. There's like, young people are not going to vote for us. I mean, I was seeing stats like 25 to 30 to 40% of young voters didn't know the difference between Trump and Clinton on the issues.
Right.
They just thought they were the same issues. I'm like, oh, you got some work to do.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the news narrative too. That has been really weird, which is this sort of like, we want to be fair and balanced, and so we're sort of like, Trump's got his issues and Hillary's got her issues. Yeah. And if Trump said the world was flat, they'd sort of say, well, point of view 1, world flat, Trump. Point of view 2, Earth is a celestial body orbiting the sun, Hillary. Discuss.
Right.
And somebody would be on CNN being like, that's not, not what Trump said. Like,
it's hopefully this news cycle will prove to be the death of false equivalency, is what we call that in the news biz. Because it's BS. What can we say? By the way, what's our...
anything.
We can say anything.
Yeah, like what the fuck, whatever.
We can say that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just want to know how classy you want to keep it.
I think you can even say that on the real radio. Like, is the FCC even funded anymore?
Well, you only get busted if someone complains if you say what the fuck.
I guess that's... Yeah. You remember, like, back in the day, people used to complain, like, about TV shows? Like, I don't think those guys are around anymore. Like...
Oh, they're always around.
Alf said...
Alf dropped an F-bomb again.
Exactly.
He wasn't wearing any pants.
Exactly. The outrage.
So where were we here?
False equivalency.
False equivalency, yes. Hopefully it's a death of that because you have nonpartisan, independent fact checkers are saying like anywhere from 50 to 60, and I saw that 70% of what Trump has said is wrong.
Yeah,
is wrong.
Yeah.
It's factually wrong. The problem is, and this is a post-election problem, is that a lot of the people who like Trump are not so bound by facts and science, and that's terrifying.
Yeah,
I mean, if we're not looking at the same factual things and coming to the same conclusions, then we're in real trouble.
Yeah. So this is something I actually, in terms of bedwetting, though, early on, like I swear this is true. Early on, I was like, I think Trump's going to win the Republican nomination.
Really?
And everybody I talked to was like, "You're just fucking." Like they talked to me like I was a complete fucking idiot.
Really?
And I wasn't doing any magic. I was like, he keeps winning every single contest. Like by the fifth one, he's winning every contest, and winning the polls before the contest. So none of them are surprises.
Yeah.
And then there's some complex explanation about why something different's going to happen next time. I was like, I followed sports long enough to know. Like, okay. Like, they're just winning. Like, the Northwestern's not going to win the next game. Whatever.
Well, that was an easier call.
And so I feel like there was something to it where, like, at least in the liberal bubble that is San Francisco or the NPR podcast I listen to, people were giggling about Trump way too late and way too long. Like, they just thought that the John Oliver, like, he said this and then he contradicted himself, was such a, disqualifying zinger.
Right.
And it seemed early on to me that clearly it was not. That clearly your average Trump person was excited about the wall or keep the immigrants out or whatever and didn't really care that in 1979 he said this and in 84 he said that. And I don't, for some reason, I think a lot of liberal pundits did not take this seriously till very late in the game.
Yeah, not only did liberal pundits not take it seriously, but other Republican candidates didn't take it seriously.
Right.
The guy got, Ted Cruz was saying, I want to hug it out with him. People are trying to get me to attack Donald Trump. I'm not going to do that. He said that was back in December.
Right.
And then when Trump's kicking his ass, linking his dad to the Kennedy assassination, and he's like, and ripping his wife, then he finally wakes up and explodes on him. But then it's too late, so he didn't do it. But I think the other thing that the media didn't pick up on, and Republicans didn't pick up on, and Democrats didn't pick up on, and something we all need to worry about at the end of the race is he is speaking to people who are genuinely hurt, frustrated, and I saw that I grew up in Pittsburgh, Western Pennsylvania, when I was out there talking to voters in Ohio and talking to voters there, and these are people who were, they thought they'd go up, have a job in the mill. And then they have great, fantastic benefits. Yeah. I mean, many of those folks are getting the Cadillac health benefits, as they're called. Very good health benefits. But then, the mills back up. It's easier to get people overseas to make stuff that don't have good benefits and can pay them cheaply. So they're out of work. And then they're out of work in their 40s and 50s. And then what do they do?
Yeah.
Then they say, a lot of guys, I'll do a landscaping business. I'll become a contractor. Then they're having to, pay for their own health benefits. Right. And they're like, wow, that Republican thing kind of looks okay. Yeah. So economically, they're going there. And then I think socially, they're also saying, well, it's all these immigrants coming in and taking my jobs. Yeah. Now, in Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania, there's not a huge influx of Central and South American immigrants taking anybody's job. But it's the thought of that those jobs went overseas to somewhere. Trump was like their vessel. Yeah. And I asked these guys, I go, this guy's a billionaire. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. What does he have in common with you? And he goes, no, he's telling it like it is. He's not politically correct. Yeah. And that's the other one that I try to explore. Is like, what does that mean? Yeah. And that means that he can say whatever the hell he wants. Yeah. I can't say that. If I said this, I get in trouble. Yeah. Well, the reason he can say that is he's a rich guy. Yeah, of course. Of course, he can hire lawyers when people he says all the horrible things he says. Yeah. So, but I think he does speak to a lot of people, a lot of the fear and the anxiety that they have. And if I were Hillary, if she were to win, because we still have to say that one day before.
I got 30% chance is what they Silver gives them. Like,
chance, yeah.
I wouldn't get on that airplane.
No,
it was going to crash 30% of the time. Nope.
So if she, I would go back to, she campaigned enough in Ohio, but now that you don't need someone's vote, go back there and start listening to people. And
or send Bill Clinton back. Like, he needs something to do. He's like, look, send me here, send me there.
Yeah.
Go to coal country and figure something out.
Yes.
I think that's right. I think everyone's like, oh, he's a racist. And I mean, he probably is. But I actually thought the racism, like the wall, the economic stuff wasn't a dog whistle for racism. The racism was a dog whistle for economic stuff. Like, because it was the Mexicans are going to come and steal your jobs and the Chinese are stealing your jobs. It was never black guys because the black guys aren't stealing your jobs. So I really think he was just like, I hear you're hurting, and I'm going to get rid of those job stealers. And then everyone else in San Francisco heard the racist part of that,
right?
Which was a big part of it, of course, but they didn't hear the sort of like, and they're like, well, technically NAFTA is way too now you're just, come on, like no one's going to get that.
Right. Yeah, and every trade deal is bad and stuff, which is, I mean, people. That's another reason people in the Valley hate them.
Yeah,
because they like international trade deals, especially ones with Asia.
Yeah.
And that was another fun thing to talk to folks in the Valley, which I'm sure you do all the time, about what they feel about Trump, which I found endlessly funny.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what I heard, and I'm anxious to hear what you say. They hate him for a couple of things. One, about immigration.
Yeah.
It's a valley of immigrants.
For sure.
Yeah, that's okay. Number one, number two, they kind of look down their nose in the fact that he didn't get his money in real estate.
Yeah,
they're just like that's not a maker, if you will. That's just like someone. I mean, yes, he built buildings and such, but just like there was like kind of like, oh, it's real estate,
right?
And so those type of things that's what I got ready to. And they don't think he was all that sharp.
Yeah.
And so those three things I kept hearing over and over. It wasn't so much that Republican or Democrat. That stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think that's totally right. I think there's too much of like, watching the John Oliver and that kind of thing. And so early on, I watched a whole Trump speech for some reason. I don't know why. Like it was on CNN or something. And you're like, if you're predisposed not to just think he's an idiot, it was just like a speech. It was he was pretty entertaining, and he was clearly talking about economics. And then the part where he said one ridiculous thing was like 30 seconds at the end. And if you didn't have John Oliver pointing it out, teeing it up and all that, and you're off in Pennsylvania, Allentown somewhere, you probably wouldn't be just outraged by it. So I was kind of like, I don't know. I think everyone's just missing this guy. It just it's way too much with the John Oliver and the Jon Stewart. And they're right, but you're kind of missing the other side of it.
He is speaking to something. I saw him speak in Fresno. And it's a wonderful experience to hear him live. I mean, wonderful. Maybe, we'll think of another word for that. But it was like 60 minutes, 65 minutes. He did a longer set than Johnny Winter.
Yeah, well, nice.
It is. It's like a lot of it's generic stuff, and then there's zero policy. There's nothing. Here's my 10-point plan for this. And then he went off, and this is Fresno. He went off in like a maybe 10-minute riff about why Macy's they cut him off after his initial remarks. They ended the deal with him, and so he went off on Macy's, and he starts talking about some executives at Macy's who he had a falling out with, and like who in Fresno gives a crap about this? Who anywhere really gives a crap about it? But it's like, especially he goes, the farmers, the water, we're going to take care of you. It'll be fine.
Right.
Well, I mean,
but that's all people want to hear.
That's what it's going to be fine.
Yeah, they don't want the policy, really, lay out a water policy. What does that look like?
I know, I'm nerdy in that way, but idealistic. But I know, I totally hear you. They don't want to hear that. People were wearing Farmers for Trump shirts, and so I was talking to some of these folks, and I was like, well, I mean, let's be real here. I'm not going to use a name or anything, but for my own edification, how many of the people who work on your farm are not in this country legally? And they go, well, some of them, some of them. And I was like, well, if this guy wants to send everybody back and build the wall and everything, what are you going to do for people to work? No, it's different. No, it's not. And it was not a thought through thing. They didn't make that connection.
Yeah.
And it was just he just spoke to people so well. And I don't know.
I think that's right. I think there's a component to it where they're like, look, we don't think that he's probably not going to change everything.
Yes,
but what the fuck? It's a 2% chance. Like, I know the lottery ticket, I'm probably not going to win, but let's see, because I know with the other person, it's not going to be what I want. Or I think there's a 0% chance. I think he's a 2% chance. So when you say, but he's probably not going to change anything, you're like, yeah, you're right.
They said that. It's like, oh, he's just saying stuff. Well, the stuff he's saying is offensive to people and is hurtful and is wrong. But that it doesn't matter. He was saying it, and he connected with people. I
think that was the first stuff that actually hurt him was when the stuff came out about him and the women. That's where I think people were like, oh, I mean, the fact that he contradicted himself and he made his money this way, and he's like, I think that was lost on everybody. Yeah. But the stuff about abusing women and all that, I think there's a few people who probably listen to that like, yeah, that's a little bit, that's a bridge too far.
That was a bridge too far for me.
So what are your predictions for tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
In podcast world, this is the Monday before the election, which is literally on the last possible day it could be.
The national. Okay, so I think that she will sweep by,
and Pence will do the concession speech.
No, he'll do it.
You think?
Yeah. That's one of the keys to watch is how he handles this. Because
there's a world where if he can. I remember I saw him he won New Hampshire. Now he won after losing something else. I'm probably getting that wrong.
Yeah. No,
but he gave like a gracious speech, which I'd never heard from him before. Something like, congratulations to, loser number 1, loser number 2, whatever. But you were like, that looks real good on him. Like if he could at all crack off a gracious speech.
Right.
And I'm not too confident.
Yeah, but what's his incentive to do so now? I mean, I don't. Yeah. It could go any different way. I quit predicting the guy. But it's really important that he does, because if he sets the tone and continues our 240-year tradition of a peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah.
That's core to democracy. That's core to the way we are. I mean, because if people don't believe in the democracy. And we should cue the Snuffy Walden West Wing music. If people don't believe in the democracy, then we're done.
Right.
We're done. That's all we have. Yeah. Is that people believe in the core of the system, and if they don't believe in the core of the system, you can say it's. I agree with them that the system is rigged. It's rigged in favor of people who have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. And that's another value that he and Bernie Sanders illuminated.
Yeah.
But when you have people not believing in the voting system, that's bad.
Yeah, he's made it appear. He's brought you too close to how tenuous it is, because you start thinking like, and I saw somebody make the point that Newt Gingrich started this whole thing, where he was the first one who kind of looked at the C-SPAN cameras and would say shit about the president that nobody would have ever said in history before. And then the term they use is kind of, they're like, once you use mustard gas, like once you're the first person and other people start using it, like until then you're like, that's not cool. And then somebody does it and suddenly everybody's doing it and you're fucked. Like everybody's fucked. And so with Trump on this stuff, I'm kind of like, man, okay, now does Hillary, who controls the military now? Like, because that's what other countries do, right?
God, yeah.
The military comes who's in charge of that? Like, so you're sort of like, okay, don't get, but getting close to that edge is like,
we've never had to even like start walking down that door.
Right.
I mean, think of 2000 when we went 6 weeks without knowing who the president was.
Right.
And we survived that.
Yeah.
And Al Gore gave a very gracious speech. Yep. I mean, it's how many times do you get to say, be more like Al Gore?
Yeah, right. Right.
But he performed it. It was a very great role model in that way.
Yeah.
And he's used it as a...
And his career worked out just fine, by the way.
He sold his TV network that I used to be on for like $500 million.
Right.
That's okay. He's okay.
To Al Jazeera, too.
To Al Jazeera, to an oil-producing nation.
Petro state. Hey, whatever.
That's all right. Yeah. You brothers don't make a dollar.
That's ironic.
Yes, it is.
Oh, man. So your prediction for tomorrow is not chaos in the streets?
I hope not, no.
Yeah.
I think I go back to people are too lazy to be.
Well, they're too old.
Too old.
Like young men end up in the square. By the way,
they will actually be using pitchforks and torches because that's.
We got to make sure there's no squares. That's where all the trouble is. Like in the Middle East, it's always something.
Close the square.
Yeah, don't make squares anymore. It's like I think Ronald Reagan, didn't he do that with what was the campus?
He go Berkeley when he was governor.
No, but he when Santa Cruz got built while he was there, and I think Santa Cruz has no square there's no central place in Santa Cruz.
Really, I did not know that.
Yeah, because that's where
that was why.
Yeah. Like this,
he actually closed it.
Well, he didn't close it. They just
squares.
built it so there's all these kind of distributed cabins up in the redwoods. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true.
Yeah, that's
if not, that sounds pretty cool. Like no one's going to research it and fact check me because
you never know. I think I may fact check you.
So what? That was my big takeaway. My biggest takeaway from the election was just how long the liberal press and liberal friends just didn't take the other side seriously at all. And still, now that they take it seriously, they're like his voters are a bunch of bad people.
Yeah.
And maybe they are, but they're idiots, they're bad people, they're dumber than me, which has kind of an interesting implication too, where are they not going to be sympathetic now? Now that you know the issue, there's a lot of people who are economically hurting.
Yeah.
And the let them eat cake probably doesn't work. They should just learn to code or something, like the 50-year-old steelworker. They just learn a new skill. It probably isn't the answer, but are they is there sympathy?
I hope so. And I think that those are two great points. And on the first one, they didn't take Trump seriously. I think part of that is, and as
I'm
an adopted West Coaster, I can say this, it is the East Coast liberal media establishment.
Yep.
Not even necessarily liberal. It's the East Coast media establishment.
Because
they grew up around it.
They refer to it, if they're talking to somebody in San Francisco, they always say out there.
Yeah.
It's like you people. They're out there. We're right here. You're out there.
Stay there. Stay there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, because I think they grew up around Trump. They saw him as there was a familiarity with him. They're like, oh, it's Trump. It's Trump. Come on.
Right.
He's kind of a character of New York. Well, that's one thing, but being president of the United States is an entirely different one. So I think he got a free pass on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Early. Which, literally millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars of free advertising that legitimized him early. And what was your second point? It was about the...
are people going to be compassionate?
Oh, yeah, I hope so. I hope that enough people have gone out and talked to real voters. Because the feeling's mutual. People hate the liberal media.
Yeah.
They hate the media, which they assume everyone is liberal in.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a mutual... hopefully, that is a bridge can be made because there has to be. You can't. Every institution is in the country is not look really good on this. Yeah. Politics, media.
CNN tries valiantly, and the result is they put on the Trump supporters, and they're just exasperating to watch. They are. Like somebody was saying, if you ever had an oil spill, you should hire these people to represent you because their just ability to go. They just made this decision at some point. Just be like, no, didn't say that, didn't mean that. What about Bill Clinton?
What about Bill Clinton? Yes,
he did something similar 30 years ago and isn't running for president.
I think CNN in particular needs to review its pundit policies.
Yeah,
because when you have a guy, there should be no one on there. Who's on the payroll of someone else?
Yeah,
and that's just weird.
Well,
and I understand that, and I mean, what I try to do to get around that, I know a lot of political reporters quote people who work for the campaigns or strategists, and I do assault them in once in a while, but I always go to academics, and people and professors and folks who are somewhat dispassionate and have done and studied this stuff, so an insight that way. Otherwise, you're getting knee-jerk.
I find it super uninteresting. The two sides yelling at each other.
Yeah.
When it's someone, it's like Doris Kearns Goodwin or David Brooks or something like that, who's just being thoughtful about it.
Yes.
That's kind of interesting. I wish they'd get that kind. And you can have David Brooks, who's a conservative guy.
Yeah.
But he's a little bit thoughtful. So.
Yes. Oh, speaking of Newt Gingrich, maybe that's what I wanted to say. When he was doing his backbencher stuff, and that's a great.
That's exactly what he did.
He rose to power. His obscure history professor from Georgia, and he rose to power that way. He was a great organizer. someone who studied his tapes of him, Van Jones.
Really?
Van Jones told me that. A long time San Francisco
the Green
organizer.
for All. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Obama White House and now on CNN. Then he eventually had a show with Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to him about it, I was like, you and Newt Gingrich, that is just so weird. He goes, oh no, I studied his tapes to learn. He's great at making an argument.
Yeah.
You may not agree with it, but
yeah.
he's really good, and he's a smart guy.
Yeah.
But I always found that linkage very amusing.
All right, so let's turn to California. What's important? Gavin Newsom was saying he's got 2 guns and
weed.
Guns and weed. Okay, man, he couldn't get in on the porn one, or he'd have a movie.
There is a porn.
There's a porn one, right?
Yes.
He's not involved. Gavin not involved.
Not involved in that. Yes. Your neighbor here.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple things. He told me that a couple weeks ago that he was 80% sure that the marijuana legalization measure would pass. Nobody ever says 80%. I go, what are you, Nate Silver?
Yeah.
And he goes, yes, but I like Nate. I reserve the right to change my mind afterwards.
How does hair look?
Oh, beautiful.
Fabulous.
That's beautiful.
Good
looking. Always, yeah.
Good looking.
What's hair, by the way? That's hair so
I am, it is way overrated.
It is. And then the guns thing is also looking good. The funny thing about it, I was looking at some poll numbers on.
Yep.
Tell me if we get too into the weeds here. Okay. On.
This is the election special.
Where's my? On weed from it was on the ballot in 2010. It was a legalization measure, and one of the big differences are back in Prop 19 in 2010. The big change is people between 40 and 49, only 39% of them supported it. And now that number is up to 68.
Really?
And then the other big change was Latinos. Only 35% of Latinos supported it 6 years ago. Now 59% of Latinos support it. And it was, a lot of it was, the electorate might have been a little bit older then. It was a religious, there's a lot of campaigning in the churches against it. There was also there was a stronger anti-campaign. The cops were threw more money at it. But this time, and large credit to Newsom, he has worked on this for 2 years.
Yeah.
He did the Blue Ribbon Commission to study what it would be like.
He's always too early, right? Like, wasn't he too early on the gay right? He's like, God damn it, I'm doing God's work here. I'm doing good things. The Democrats just get mad at me every time because they did it the wrong year. And,
they're kind of mad at him at the guns thing, which would basically require you to get a permit to buy ammunition.
Right.
To buy guns. Some of the stuff that's in that measure was in a package of bills that was passed by the legislature, and so they're saying, "Oh, we're just doing this to grandstand and get your name out there," which is accurate.
Yeah.
But it also covers a few other things out there. So I mean, this also answers a couple questions about Newsom that people have concerns about. They're like, well, he has a lot of good ideas, but doesn't follow through all the time.
Yeah.
This shows that if he gets 2 wins here, that's 2 big notches on his belt. And that's good. One of his likely competitors, though, for governor is Tom Steyer, who's the billionaire former hedge fund manager in San Francisco, turned environmentalist, and he has done all kinds. He's all over the place. He's sprinkled money in a number of initiatives. He's backing a $2 pack tobacco tax.
Yeah.
I think a pack of cigarettes now is going to be like $10 or $11.
Yeah.
I'm thank God I don't smoke because I would be broke.
Yeah.
Big tobacco threw a ton of money at him on that, and he's looks like it's going to win. And also Steyer has contributed tens of millions for get out the vote across the country for young people.
Oh.
So, and because most people, I mean, you and I may know who he is, and the political geeks may know who he is, but most people are like, who the hell's Tom Steyer?
Yeah.
So he's trying, and all his commercials, if you see them on TV or online, feature Tom Steyer.
Yeah.
Here's Tom Steyer in front of a bunch of
I have seen that, right?
Here's Tom Steyer in front of a bunch of young people of color. So it's like, here's Tom Steyer in the middle of a field, talking about green energy. So it's introducing, those are serving the dual purpose of introducing him to the electorate for because about 10 seconds after the polls close, we're going to start caring about California's governor's race.
Yeah.
In 2018.
Yep. Yeah. I see. So we work at the Founders Den, which is this co-working space, and Gavin Newsom is here. You know, the joke is he wakes up every morning and checks to see if the governor's still doing okay and gets on with his day. But he's here in San Francisco among the job creators, as he would say. And I mean, seems like a lovely guy. And I can't name another candidate, really. Well, now I can. I couldn't name another candidate for governor of California.
Yes.
So what happens when this marijuana thing passes? Like, that's it, right? We're not going to meth next. Like, are we?
It's the gateway ballot measure.
Is it the gateway? Are shrooms going to be next?
Sure.
Like what?
We're having a college flat bash. No, I don't.
What does it set up some conflict with the federal government, or like
yes,
what?
That will be a challenge.
So the feds will be able to come in, but the local police won't. Like what?
No, here's what the feds. At least under this current administration, have sort of backed off. And they said, you know what, if your state can put together a coherent system of rules and regulations around marijuana,
right.
we'll leave you alone. So California last year, what year is this? Last year put together a coherent set of rules around medical marijuana because it didn't have one.
Yeah.
Right now, you know, if we could make a call, we could have a card in 10 minutes and have weed delivered.
I just found that medical marijuana bug. It was so cynical. Like I know there was a guy or two with the cancer, but
there's not that much glaucoma out there.
I know there's some seeing eye dogs out there.
There's a lot of people,
but service dogs are bullshit.
Need it legitimately, but there's not that many.
Yeah. So I'm glad that they're cleaning that up.
Yes. So that's rule and regulations are in place. That will basically form the template of how recreational marijuana is going to be treated in California.
Got it.
And it is a huge money-making opportunity.
Right.
It is the medical
except for the current growers.
Except for the current
who are probably pretty bummed.
Yeah, because it's a mixed bag for them. The plus side, they can kind of come out of the shadows.
Right.
The downside is they're going to have to get so many licenses and such that I remember a story in yesterday's editions that the marijuana price is likely going to plummet.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Big time. There is something written into the legislation that gives small growers kind of a 5-year head start to get a foothold in the industry.
Yeah.
Because Newsom was very open, saying we don't want big players coming in right away and bigfooting everybody.
And who are big players? Are there emergent big players? It's not literally existing tobacco companies, is it?
The concern is big pharma, big tobacco is going to buy up a lot of land in the Central Valley from farmers there who are hurting.
Oh, right.
Grow massive amount of weed and undercut the price on it. Then the other thing is that they're so small. So you have small growers, people who've been growing 2 and 3 generations at this point. They're hosed.
Yeah.
So their hope is to, over the next 5 years, turn their type of cannabis into sort of a boutique cannabis. So making a wine country, if you will. Of that type of thing. So you have different varietals of weed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, High Times Magazine always.
They've been telling us that.
They've been saying that for a long time. So what else is interesting in what do I need to worry about in California?
Well, I'm kind of interested in, there's 17 ballot measures on there, so a lot of stuff's gotten lost in the giant shadow of the presidential campaign. But California could be on the verge of ending the death penalty.
Oh yeah,
which is amazing.
Yeah,
and it's ahead of the polls. The last poll was up 51%, which is as the political types they want it in the high 50s, in fact 60%, to make sure that that they breathe at night. So they're bedwetting right now.
Yeah,
but still.
Well, I think on that issue, there's nothing going on right now. Like it's not top of mind. Like I was like, it seems like get rid of that thing, whatever. But there's not a case right now. I haven't heard of a case in a while. I bet it's not top of mind for a ton of people.
No, it's not. And then there's a confusing thing because there's 2 death penalty measures on the Prop 62 is the one that eliminates it. The 66 kind of tries to reform it.
Yeah.
Let's make it legally easy. It's kind of a fast track.
Yeah. That's an interesting one.
We talked about 63, the nuisance firearms thing. We talked about 56, the cigarette tax. The other one is like our good friend Bernie Sanders has been pushing. We see him on TV.
The soda thing.
61. No, the soda tax is also that's on the state ballot, but on the prescription drug purchases. In other words, it would require the state when they're buying drugs for like Medi-Cal folks and various state agencies that buy drugs to pay the same price as the federal Veterans Administration. If they do that, they hope that they bring down. This has been the most expensive ballot measure in, I believe, the nation's history.
Yep.
The Big Pharma has poured in $100 million into this, and the other guys have Bernie and a couple of rumpled suits, $16 million. Right. And that's right now is a dead heat.
Really?
It's a dead heat, 47-47 according to the latest field poll. Those are the things that I'm watching at. The other thing, your taxes are likely to go up if you make a lot of money in California. When Jerry Brown, started back the tax extensions for wealthier people about 4 or 5 years ago, they were supposed to expire in a couple of years. This would extend them even further to, I think, 2030. Yeah. 2030. That's far ahead in the polls, too. And again, take advantage of a younger electorate that doesn't care.
Yeah. All right, well, let's turn to Silicon Valley. San Francisco. What do I...
San Francisco. I haven't followed those ballot measures as much.
Yeah.
But I think that the soda tax, which is on the ballot in here and in San Francisco and in Oakland, I think it's ahead, from what I hear, more in Oakland than in San Francisco.
That's interesting.
It's a little bit strange there. That was a weird case because it was described as a grocery tax.
Yeah, right.
And the person who said that was Bernie Sanders.
Really?
Yeah, he was actually. It was the people who were opposed to the soda tax used Bernie Sanders' actual language. And this is like a grocery tax.
Yeah.
And it really that was not a direct quote or and a terrible impression. But the
you're no Larry David.
And then Bernie had to come out and say, well, no, you're taking me out of context because that would have him on the same side as major corporations. So it was an uncomfortable position for him. There's also affordable housing measures on the ballot in both Oakland and San Francisco. And I think this is a reaction to what's going on here.
Yeah.
And I think that people they're frustrated as to what do we do?
Yeah.
In our city, people live there a long time. My city is changing.
Yep.
I can't afford stuff anymore.
Buildings are sinking.
They're sinking.
Tipping over. Come on, people.
Believe me, that'll be on the ballot somehow.
Oh.
Give me a couple of years.
Yeah.
That'll be on
some of these I can't. The soda tax I can't keep up with. I went for this total NIMBY. There's this ridiculous one called Proposition E, I think it is, and it's the one where, if you got a tree in front of your property, the city takes care of it, not you. And if your sidewalk gets cracked, the city fixes it, not you.
Right.
Very much for that. Yeah. I feel this is a very important issue.
Well, that's like, there's this whole stack of things that shouldn't be on the ballot. Do your fucking job.
Oh, for sure.
Do your fucking job.
I'm all for going back to a representative government where I pick a guy or a woman who's like going to go to Sacramento and figure out the water bond.
Yeah.
I'll trust them. Like, I don't need to vote on, like, some of this stuff. Like, the soda tax, like, I don't know. Like, the BART thing, I think it goes to improve the trains, but then some people are like, no, it just goes to pensions. Like,
I think as I took the BART and Muni over here today, I think they're doing some last-minute campaigning because they shut all the elevators in the Embarcadero stop, and there was really it was a really long line to walk up the stairs to get out of BART. And I'm just thinking, people are this is just seeding the fact that we know, we should pay some money to fix this. BART shouldn't be like this all the time. It's some shameless last-minute campaigning on BART. I have nothing to prove.
It is ridiculous. It is
a feeling.
The escalators being out of service for months. Like, there's escalators in all kinds of businesses, all kinds of shopping malls, indoors, outdoors. They're not broken.
I believe a couple years ago, the Chronicle reported that some of the reasons that some of the elevators are broken is that people are defecating in them. And that's
no, you shouldn't do that.
Gums up the
wow.
Gums up the works.
Wow, that's inside the beltway. So what?
Or outside the beltway.
Yeah, outside the beltway. What is the So what? We wrap up on this, but the housing thing. Like, what is it? So being here, having been here for like 20 years or so, everybody seems mad at somebody about affordable housing. So, but like, it just seems to me like you're mad at supply. Like, I live in the Mission, and you see sort of like, tech bro, get out of here, like graffiti. Like, well, that's like an immigrant go home message, really, like just a different form of it. And I don't think that's the Hispanic families who've lived there forever, maybe, but probably not. Yeah. Like, what's going on? Is it just developers taking advantage of kind of the greens to build high rises, or like?
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff going on here, and it kind of relates to, and we were talking about earlier. There's a feeling out there. People are losing their homes because the prices are going up, obviously, and so they're frustrated. I mean, they're pissed off. Wouldn't you be? And so I think that what can we do about it?
Right.
And this is using the levers of government to try and do something about it, which is always kind of a mixed bag. You don't know what can they do.
Yeah.
I think there's some of the activism has really moved. The public pressures put pressure on City Hall to, ramp up the amount of affordable housing that must be included in some of these new developments. Like what's the one, the Monster and the Mission.
Right.
I forget what the final total was for the amount of affordable housing that was included in that, but it was a lot more than it was initially designed for.
Right.
We did a project about the Mission District a couple of years ago, where we looked at one block, and in one corner of the block, there was a woman who was living there, who'd come from Central America, was living there on $600 a month, so Social Security. Other guy living across the street had invented a new app for FIFA, I think.
Yeah.
And he was living in a converted garage, and he was paying $5,000 a month.
Yeah.
And then below them was Phil's Coffee, the original Phil's Coffee, which has exploded all over the place. Yeah. And then there's behind them was another apartment building that was they'd just gotten their notice that it was about to be renovated, so everybody's got to get out.
Yeah.
And that neighborhood's always been changed.
Yeah, a lot of fires in the Mission lately, by the way.
Yeah. I'm walking away from that.
Not to be a conspiracy guy. Wow. A lot of fires. But it just seems.
Going back to the feelings we were talking about, the people from Ohio and Pennsylvania looking for, they're frustrated, and so and you want someone to blame.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of it. And the people who they want to blame are the people who have the money to come in and buy these new places.
Yeah.
And so they're taking their frustration. But and that's the downside of capitalism.
Yeah.
And because what do you do? That's the way the system is set up now. So they're advocating for change within the system, and I don't. We'll see what happens. You have to build something like. God, what was the figure? Something like 90,000 units. And Ed Lee in the administration said, we're going to build 20,000 units. Well, you've got to build it. And for the Mission to stay affordable, you would have to build it. You have to build a ton of it there. You can't.
Yeah.
You can relieve the pressure, the economic pressure on housing and build a ton of housing. But if you build it, way out in, way out, I don't even know where you could build in San Francisco. New York, building in Hunters Point. Places, but that's not going to necessarily keep the character of the Mission District that you want, because the people who could afford that would have to leave the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Because it's really, really hard to slow down the wheels of capitalism.
Yeah. I mean, is there any point where you just go, look, San Francisco's just not that big? I mean, unless you go for the Hong Kong, built to the sky.
On the have seismic concerns. And
is there some point where you don't? It's just not big enough. Like, there has to be some other, you can't put your next company in San Francisco. It's going to have to be in Oakland or Sacramento or something.
Right. And where I live in Oakland, we've been the beneficiaries of a lot of that stuff, because a lot of people have come on over, residents and businesses, and restaurants and everything.
Right.
I mean, you can. That's the major. That's the major constraint is the physical, the geographic constraint here of a 7x7 city. 7 mile by 7 mile. You can only do so much.
Yeah.
And there are restrictions on heights, and then what do? You have to make some decisions. Well, and then plus it's so difficult to build anything here.
Yeah.
Because of the amount of because everyone knows the rules and knows how to get their voice heard and can gum up the works, and will that jam up projects forever.
Yeah. Well, there's some group that's opposing the Warriors. Like, so the Warriors are building an arena, basically on a piece of crap property down by the water. That
now they're in another interior. They're kind of I guess they're in the water still, but they're not in their original spot. But
the argument against them now is that there's a hospital near there, and somebody has to go to the hospital during the game. But it's like the Mark Benioff Hospital, and I think the land was given to the Warriors by Mark Benioff. So
there's a lot of strange bedfellows. There's always but those folks don't want the. You could put that arena anywhere and people wouldn't want it to be built. Some people.
That's true. So can't this housing thing just end in a bust? I mean, it just seems like I walk down on my way to work. There's just these hundreds of units going up on every corner. Like, are there really that many people who can buy like thousands and thousands of There's not a field of people just sitting somewhere waiting to move in. Like, they're somewhere now. Is it just that people move in from around the world or buy in from around the world?
I think there's people moving in from around the world. I think there's a lot of people with second units and such. And I don't know. And speculators, I have not studied that deeply of the housing patterns here. But, developers will not build it if they did not feel there was a market for it.
Yeah.
But how many of those, and even when they say this is, quote unquote, this 25% will be set aside for affordables now defined as a family making $150,000 or
Is that true?
It's like, I don't know what the figure is, but it's a ridiculous figure. I mean, it's, given that the median income in the United States is or the median family income is probably a third of that.
Yeah.
That's and Lord knows what it is here now.
Yeah, it has been the last couple of years. I really start feeling like if you go to a restaurant or you have somebody who is an admin at your business or whatever, where you're like, where the hell are they like living? Yeah, it used to be they're in the Mission,
right?
Or they can't live in the marina. They're in the Mission, which was fine. And now it's like they can't live in anywhere near the Bay Area.
And you see that expressed in the traffic study that came out the other day that said now the traffic to Silicon Valley is like an LA type proportion.
Yo, I believe it.
And traffic has gotten worse here because people are moving out and further out to the burbs. Yeah. They're moving even further out to the burbs. They're moving, to Tracy and such, way out there. The people who are driving the buses to take folks up and down the valley are living, an hour's drive from the bus that they have to drive, up and down, and that's unsafe.
Yeah, and every time you get an Uber drivers have all come in from, you talk to somebody like, after this I'm heading home. Like, where's that? Oh, Sacramento.
I've run into a couple Uber drivers in Sac. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. All
right. Well, we're not going to solve the housing problem. It sounds like.
We have a couple more minutes. Think we can solve it, or no?
I have a podcast. It's a powerful form. So what's your wrap up for tomorrow? What's the Chronicle doing all day?
We're constantly updating all day. I'm going to start.
Do you go to different parties, like the Scott Wiener event?
No, I will be writing. I have to figure out where to go. Who wins?
Oh,
that's that. I'm writing that.
Will we know tomorrow?
We hope so. For me, I hope.
Yeah.
I really want this to be over tomorrow. That'd
exactly.
be wonderful. I'll be writing a main story. I'll be starting the day at KTVU and talking about something else, and then talking about the day, and then starting to write my story, the background of it, and then go back on KTVU to kill time for a couple of hours before the polls close.
And isn't the polls? It's the ones that close. It's once Pennsylvania and North Carolina close, you'll pretty much know.
Yeah. If you go watch, here's a few things to watch for tomorrow. If Clinton, if she's got to hold on to Michigan, Wisconsin, which she very well will, Pennsylvania, which is likely to.
I love her ending in Pennsylvania. She's having Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. So we got genius of the campaign. We got a bunch of middle-aged white guys that we need to persuade. Is Dave Matthews available? And if not, can we get Bruce to come down?
Bruce, I think, is the call.
Yes.
On that. And then New Hampshire. If she takes New Hampshire, it's pretty much game over.
Yeah.
She can probably afford to lose Florida, and she'll likely lose Ohio. But if she holds on to the blue firewall, as the campaign describes it, she should be okay. And even if she loses New Hampshire, should squeak by. But it's going to be. And if the latest scenario is that the House will be a 50-50 split with Tim Kaine if he were to be elected.
The House,
or the Senate. I'm sorry, casting the deciding vote, so it would be barely in Democratic hands if Clinton were to win, and then the House is they'll pick up 15 seats. They'll still be. They need 30. The Democrats need 30 to flip it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Even Pelosi said that, and she's usually just a shameless cheerleader.
Optimist, yeah.
And we were talking to her the other day, and she's like, "Yeah, 20 sounds about right." I was like, "Really? Is she saying 20?"
Yeah.
I was like, "She said, yeah, that's it." But she said, if you see a net gain, if your listeners are watching the net gain of 10 Democratic House seats on the East Coast when the first returns come in, then it could flip.
Wow.
But that's an optimistic scenario.
Will the networks call this, or are they going to be gun shy about calling it after, given the election?
I think
who's going to have the balls to go? Okay, we're calling the election for Hillary.
First of all, none of them.
Yeah,
but because they haven't shown any
after Florida.
Yes.
Cool.
I think they'll be shameless in calling it, and they won't call it until California's voted.
Yeah,
but I don't think they will be able to. I don't, because they'd have to see Nevada come in just to. And I think there's slow counts. I mean, it's not, just because the polls closed, it takes a while to count the votes.
I don't know if you know this. Does California count your vote if you mail it in if it doesn't matter?
Like, what do you mean?
If it's like, look, it doesn't matter if every vote that
you're going at the fundamentals of democracy. Every vote is counted.
You know what I mean? No, if they're so I mailed my ballot in. Yes. So it
doesn't land there until a couple of days later.
No, just like if Hillary Clinton had 10 million votes and Donald Trump had 1 million, and there was only 1 million mail-in ballots, you'd be like, well, it doesn't matter. Even if 100% of them are for Trump, why count? We only count them if we need it to figure out the outcome. But they must count them because they need it for all the propositions.
Yeah. No,
4 pages of propositions.
Right. No, they're counting everything. Yeah. And it's and what helps is a lot of the votes are in early, so that expedites that process a little bit.
Cool.
It'll be a long night.
Yeah.
You should do an all-night podcast.
My God.
Why don't you stay here and just
live?
I'm not leaving.
That's the problem. My girlfriend wants she wants to have a party. That's great. But when is the party? Is it from 5? Is it an 8-hour party starting at 5 o'clock? How does that party end?
How does it end?
You know what I mean?
Keep going, baby. Then you can join the revolution the next morning.
Oh my God!
I think you started at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you have a drink or two in you by the time the polls close on the East Coast.
Or 7:30.
Or on the West Coast.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
And then there is a big Prop 64 party in San Francisco.
Is that marijuana?
That's the marijuana one. Yes. I will probably head to that one.
But how will they get the pot? It will won't be legal until.
No, as of midnight, some of the provisions do kick in.
Really?
Yes.
All right. Well, I feel like we've done this thing.
Yeah.
All right. My guest has been Joe Garofoli, election special. We'll see if we're right. Thanks for doing it.
All right. Anytime, bud.